Senator's time's expired. Senator Harris.
Thank you. So let's just be clear. This hearing is not about the incredible importance of the service and sacrifice of the men and women of the CIA. That's not what this hearing is about. This hearing is not about the importance of the agency's mission, both of which I wholeheartedly support. This hearing is about your suitability to be the director of the CIA, and in our responsibility to participate in choosing who will be the next director of the CIA. The mission that we have now includes understanding that who we choose will be a signal to the men and women of the agency, to the American people, and to our neighbors around the world about our values as Americans on critical issues that range from our adherence to a rule of law to what we prioritize in terms of professional accountability and what we prioritize in terms of our moral authority as Americans and as a country. So one question I've not heard you answer is, do you believe that the previous interrogation techniques were immoral?
Senator, I believe that CIA officers to whom you referred.
It's a yes or no answer. Do you believe the previous interrogation techniques were immoral? I'm not asking do you believe they were legal. I'm asking do you believe they were immoral?
Senator, I believe that CIA did extraordinary work to prevent another attack on this country given the legal tools that we were authorized to use.
Please answer yes or no. Do you believe in hindsight that those techniques were immoral?
Senator, what I believe sitting here today is that I support the higher moral standard we have decided to hold ourselves to.
Can you please answer the question?
Senator, I think I've answered the question.
No, you've not. Do you believe the previous techniques, now armed with hindsight, do you believe they were immoral? Yes or no?
Senator, I believe that we should hold ourselves to the moral standard outlined in the Army Field Manual.
Okay, so I understand that you've not answered the question, but I'm going to move on. So I understand that you, from previous answers, are serving as the authority over whether or not CIA information concerning you will be classified or not. Given an obvious appearance of conflict, will you agree to recuse yourself from the responsibility and the authority to make decisions about whether or not that information will be classified or not? Will you agree to recuse yourself of that responsibility and authority? Yes or no?
Senator, I am following the guidelines that exist at CIA, and there is another declassification authority. It's called the IRO. I have not interfered with it.
Do you believe that you have the authority to recuse yourself?
I'll take that for the record. I may have the authority to recuse myself.
Assuming
I'm not a lawyer.
Do.
I'm not sure about that.
Assuming you do, and I believe you do, will you agree to recuse yourself from the responsibility and the authority of making decisions about what CIA information about you and your record will be classified or declassified?
Senator, if I had agreed with the proposals that have come up because people thought it would be advantageous to me, I think I would have been abdicating my responsibility to follow the rules that everyone at CIA follows.
Okay, and you also in this hearing have a responsibility to answer the questions that are being asked of you. I'm going to ask you a different question. Would you agree that given this appearance of conflict or potential conflict around the classification or declassification of these documents, would you agree that Director Coates instead should have the responsibility for declassification decisions regarding your background?
Senator, I think one important thing is that this committee plays a unique role to review the classified record, and we have sent over every piece of paper we can lay our hands on about my classified record, all of my evaluations over a 33-year career. And I hope every senator has had the opportunity to look at that classified material.
Indeed, I have.
But
I have another question for you then, because I only have a few minutes left. I only have a few seconds left. The President has asserted that torture works. Do you agree with that statement?
Senator, I don't believe that torture works. I believe that in the CIA's program, and I'm not attributing this to enhanced interrogation techniques, I believe, as many people, directors who have sat in this chair before me, that valuable information was obtained from senior al-Qaeda operatives that allowed us to defend this country and prevent another attack.
Is that a yes?
No, it's not a yes. We got valuable information from debriefing of al-Qaeda detainees, and I don't think it's knowable whether interrogation techniques played a role in that.
Thank you. My time is up.
Senator Cornyn.
Ms. Haspel, I note that one prominent national security expert has said that if President Obama had nominated you to be director of the CIA, it would be an easy decision to support your nomination. So it strikes me that you're being treated much differently than Director Brennan was, which Senator Cotton noted he was voted out of this committee by a vote of 12-3 and confirmed by a vote of 63-44 to be CIA director. So it strikes me, and this is not a question for you, this is an observation by me, that you and this president are being held to a double standard. And I think that's regrettable. I also remember that President Obama in 2009, when he declassified the Office of Legal Counsel memos that have been referred to here, promised the men and women of the CIA that, quote, we will protect all who acted reasonably and relied upon legal advice from the Department of Justice, that their actions were lawful. They need to be fully confident that as they defend the nation, I will defend them. And I think this committee and this Senate should remember those words by President Obama and apply those when considering your confirmation. Senator Feinstein was kind enough about a year ago to send me a book by Peter Bergen called Manhunt. It's a 10-year history of the search for Osama bin Laden, where, as I was thumbing through it recently, I was reminded that post 9/11, President Bush was concerned about reports that he had received that Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda was meeting with Pakistani officials connected with their nuclear program to gain access to a nuclear device that they might then use for a follow-on attack against cities like Washington, D.C. Without divulging classified information, can you confirm that there were concerns about follow-on attacks using nuclear devices, biological weapons, other weapons of mass destruction that might have killed more innocent Americans as happened on 9/11? Was that the environment in which you and the country were operating in at the time?
Senator, there were very grave concerns on that front, and indeed al-Qaeda had those kinds of programs, efforts to acquire crude, dirty bombs, efforts to develop, they had a program, a biological weapons program. I remember the operative who was in charge of that. There was very deep concern about potential contacts, and we continue to monitor this very closely today, between extremists and Pakistani nuclear scientists.
So here we sit years following the terrible events of 9/11, feeling very safe and secure, thanks to the incredible work being done by the intelligence community, including the good men and women at the CIA, as well as the men and women who serve in the United States military. We're feeling very safe and secure, and the memories of that terrible event are very distant. But it strikes me that in addition to the double standard that I believe you and this president are being held to, compared to Secretary Brennan, Director Brennan and President Obama's administration, that people have simply forgotten. And that's dangerous, to have forgotten the circumstances under which they were operating at the time and doing their dead level best to protect the country from a follow-on attack. I just want to note in closing that recently I had a chance to travel to a garden spot with the chairman and visit with some of those unnamed patriots who
Thank you
served
for doing that.
in the CIA. And I was struck by talking to one gentleman. He was talking about his girlfriend that he no longer had. And I said,
It's a common story.
I said, this must be incredibly difficult on marriages and on relationships and on families. Would you just take just a second to comment about the sacrifices that intelligence officers, rank and file employees of the CIA make when it comes to those sorts of relationships? And
Senator, thank you. You know, maybe I could start by saying I talked about how CIA's boots were the first on the ground in Afghanistan. We suffered the first U.S. casualty. But maybe it's important for the American people to know that CIA officers are still out there in Afghanistan. Our officers are out there fighting extremists, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban. We have 125 stars on our memorial wall now. Many of those, it's shocking how many stars we've added. I believe we added 7 stars to our wall last year. Perhaps I could cite one personal example of an officer who worked for me. She was the most extraordinary woman. She was our #1 Al-Qaeda expert. I worked with her in the Counterterrorism Center. She was having her 3rd baby in those days following 9/11, but we needed her because she had such deep expertise. She later worked for me on terrorism issues in a foreign capital, and then she went to Afghanistan, and she and 6 colleagues were murdered by a suicide bomber who penetrated our base. These are very real sacrifices. These are my friends and colleagues. All of us at CIA have a commitment and an honor-bound obligation to uphold the memory of those officers, mothers who've left their children to go to the field and sometimes have given in their all in service of this country.
I thank Senator Cornyn and Senator Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Haspel. You've been working with the administration now for 15 months. You've had the opportunity to brief the President. Have you ever